Well, it appears that I had the webcam plugged in the front of the computer, and it needed to be plugged in the back. Oh, and I also need to turn it off of my phone like that so that we don't have extra sounds there. All right, so I want to do one more chapter today, and I'm really thinking that I should go and get stuff to rebuild the fence next door, but I haven't decided yet. We'll see. Anyway, all right, so this is the 25th chapter, which is called Allow Extra Time. And here we go. Note number 25. Allow extra time. Just this morning, I read an article about a woman who decided that because of the coronavirus, she would take the train from Boston to San Francisco. I took the train once from Walnut Ridge, Arkansas to Chicago's Union Station. It was a long 11-hour trip in coach. The train picked us up in the middle of the night after waiting in a small pink room with bright fluorescent lighting. People stood around with backpacks and suitcases, looking anxiously up and down the tracks for the train headlight that would soon cut into the dark night. Thanks to delays, the northbound and southbound trains crossed at that small station, doubling the number of passengers and onlookers waiting to be whisked away. Though I kept to myself as I waited to board the coming train, I was amazed at the number of people. I had never been on a long distance train in the US before, and had just assumed most people flew. Here, in the middle of the night, at a tiny station, were dozens of people heading towards Chicago. The train came up, and just like that, we stepped aboard. Cozy and warm, the train was wider than a bus and more comfortable than a plane. With blue accents and dimmed overhead lights, it was a challenge to find my place. I found my seat next to a hairstylist, and off we went. Our long journey through the night started with a quick nap in a rather large chair, more akin to first class than coach. Sorry. And we continue. Though an airplane would have gotten us there much faster, this was much more relaxed. No TSA checks, no separation of liquids, gels, and aerosols, no shoes off, no luggage check ins or long lines. Just stand up, get on, and go. During that cold day in November, I rode through cornfields, past rivers, hills, and valleys. I got up out of my chair, walked what seemed like miles from one train car to the next, and read. The train rocked back and forth, slowly churning its way up to Chicago. I didn't have to keep my eyes on the road, speed down freeways, or read signs. In fact, I didn't have to do much. I arrived in Chicago right in the center of town and never needed to park my car. The trip was slower, but I got to experience the forests of southern Illinois as they meld into the cornfields. I have encountered others who share the wonder of long distance train travel, of how much calmer and easier it is, and of how this overlooked method of travel is returning to fashion. The spaciousness of the train, the different landscapes, and the relaxing all have great appeal, especially during social distancing. In some ways, we yearn for slowdowns. RV sales and rentals recently skyrocketed. People are exploring national parks and camping out in the wilderness. Partially, they do this to avoid catching the coronavirus, but also because we long for respite. When the world shut down in March 2020, I watched some struggle with aloneness, lose their identity without the daily grind of work, and struggle with the absence of friends or relatives. Some adjusted quickly and worked from home. Others found hobbies and interests to pass the time. My email inbox came alive with messages from former students and old friends from the past. I got a bike. I read and wrote more, and I took more time to think. A few months ago, I came across a news story about forest bathing, or what the Japanese call Shinrin Yoku. What could the possible effectiveness be of walking around in the forest? I thought. I asked my husband to go along, and he reluctantly agreed as if it wasn't too far away. I had already Googled it. The nearby state forest that I had never heard of before was only about 10 miles up the freeway from our house. My husband's reluctancy mirrored my own reticence. What a waste of time. Where was the parking lot? Would other people there have masks on? Despite all of this, off we went in my little car, headed to the state forest. The crowded parking lot didn't seem to bode well for our forest bathing adventure. How can one feel connected to nature when there are people all around? Half heartedly, we went down a trail and into the tall pine trees. As the parking lot disappeared, the sounds of the highway grew dimmer, and the gentle crunch of pine needle leaves, dirt, and rocks carried us deeper into the forest. We walked to a small ravine, water trickling through it. It was clear water, not the usual brown gunk that's more common in southeast Texas bayous. In fact, this ravine was hidden by a canopy of trees. There were palm trees along the floor, deciduous trees, birds, and since it was winter, few insects. My attention was focused on the overwhelming amount of life around me. Instantly, the problems and concerns of tomorrow or yesterday seemed far away. There was only right here, in the forest, with the trees. Surprisingly, the ride home seemed calmer. No longer worried about which lane to use to drive fastest on this busy Houston freeway, I let the car drive and I rode along, gently nudging it here and there, just being part of the freeway flow. The forest had worked, bringing me into a focused state where I stayed for a short time in the moment. When we remain in the present, all sorts of amazing things happen, including surprise at just is what is already around us. Was it really that important to get home quickly? Is it that important to fly to Chicago or rush around in my daily grind to get things done? How often do we overlook opportunities because we're too focused on getting through the day? If there's one lesson to all of this, it's that extra time can bring extraordinary results. Okay, we've gotten through another one. I guess I could do one more and then I'll call it quits for the day. As I've narrated a bunch of them now. All right, so I'll do one more and yeah, so here we go. Okay, let's see. All right, I'll hit the record button and off we go. Here I go. Note number 26. Be still and know. Tommy was one of my best friends. In fact, one of the reasons I bought my first house was because it was located just 5 doors away from hers. We were a community of two, visiting one another often, spending time together before or after work, laughing and joking and telling stories. Tommy was family. Tommy worked in a snack bar in the evenings. She earned a minimum wage and struggled to pay her rent and utility bills every month, but somehow had enough money to enjoy cable TV. She drove an old Ford Taurus, smoked like there was no tomorrow, and was a good Catholic who went to church. Often, when I would visit her, she'd be in front of the TV, book in hand. Though she had no formal training, Tommy wanted to be a detective, often reading true crime. Often, when I would visit her, she'd be in front of the TV, book in hand. Though she had no formal training, Tommy wanted to be a detective, often reading true crime mysteries while in the background, Judge Judy, Judge Joe Brown, or Criminal Minds played day and night. Though she was always ready to go junking, antique shopping, or visiting the bobblehead store, used clothing store. She never went anywhere without a wig and would often tell others how almost everything about her was fake. Fake hair, fake nails. One thing that was not fake was her personality. Tommy believed that most people were redeemable. She would spend hours talking on the phone to women who needed help, calmly urging them to do the right thing. She spent even more time supporting her granddaughters, of whom she was extremely proud. Most of all, Tommy, who had gone from having nice clothes and a nice house to living in a shack and working minimum wage jobs, had learned the importance of humility. She didn't act as though the world owed her something. Instead, she spoke honestly and quietly. If something weren't right, she would say it, and then she'd do something about it, including walking away from it. She loved working with others from the comfort of her living room and often spent hours counseling either our students, her granddaughters, or some of the many women who looked up to her. She spoke elegantly and earnestly, and people respected her because she told the truth. In short, Tommy stayed in the moment. Even after she was diagnosed with cancer, she didn't discuss what would happen in the future or who would watch her house or what others should do when she was gone. Instead, she focused on the moment. Tommy made choices: radiation only, shrink the tumor, then surgery. She never worried about getting rides to the local cancer center. Remaining in the present poses all sorts of challenges. How will we be ready for the future? How can we accept the things that are happening now? How do we face uncertainty and maybe even our own demise? My friend showed us how. With dignity, grace, and faith, Tommy demonstrated what she talked about for years working with others showed: that God takes care of us, especially in our final hours. Being Catholic, Tommy brought out her rosary, prayed fervently, and accepted that this life would likely end soon. Faith was never an abstract notion for Tommy. It was a practical necessity that informed her decision process. Though she lived in a secular world surrounded by students and faculty, occasionally she would make comments about scripture that spoke volumes to her knowledge of the Bible. Read a portion of the Psalms and Proverbs daily, she'd say. If you want to know more about church, read Acts. If a man sues you for your shirt, give him your quote, give him, damn it, try that again. 5. Faith was never an abstract notion for Tommy. It was a practical necessity that informed her decision process. Though she lived in a secular world surrounded by students and faculty, occasionally she would make comments about scripture that spoke volumes to her knowledge of the Bible. Read a portion of the Psalms and Proverbs daily, she'd say. If you want to know more about the church, read Acts. If a man sues you for your shirt, give him your coat as well, she'd quote. In fact, she quoted scripture so regularly that it inspired many of us that knew her to get Bibles. One of the phrases she quoted most often was, "God is not the author of chaos and confusion. He's the source of peace," which is a paraphrase from 1 Corinthians. She would then correlate that phrase. So that means if I feel confused, I'm not with God. Those of us who would go to her for advice often heard this phrase rather than get specific advice. It allowed us to make our own choices, informed by what we thought were the profound words of Tommy rather than the writings of Paul. If we didn't know what to do, still she offered this from Scripture: be still and know. God comes in small moments, surprises, and insights. In fact, only when our voices are silent, when we remain still, do we get to hear that small voice leading us out of fear, teaching us to walk by faith. Well, I messed that up pretty good. Let me find the spots here. God comes in small moments, surprises, and insights. Maybe that's not it. I don't think that they this. Those of us who would go to her for advice. Nope. Go back a little further. There it is. That's why we do the 5 seconds, so I can see where the faith was never an abstract notion. Where I can see where the spot is. If you want to know more about church. Nope. Though she lived in a secular world surrounded by students and faculty, read a portion of the Psalms and Proverbs daily, she'd say. If you want to know more about church, read Acts. If a man sues you for your shirt, give him your quote, give him, damn it. Faith was never an abstract. There we go. Found it. Get rid of this spot here and patch it together. And then I got another one, I think. There was another one earlier on. There it is, right? Tommy was one of my best friends. In fact, one of the reasons I bought my first house was because Tommy worked in a snack bar in the evening. She earned a minimum wage and struggled to pay her rent. Somehow had enough money to enjoy cable. There was no tomorrow and was a good cat. Often, when I would visit her, she'd be in front of the TV, book in hand. Though she had no formal training, Tommy wanted to be a detective. Here's the other one. Often, when I would visit her, she'd be in. I hadn't thought about all this in quite a while. Okay, let me find that paragraph. Though she had no formal training, Tommy wanted to be a detective. Often, when I would visit her, she'd be in front of the TV, book in hand. Tommy worked in a snack bar. Nope. It's this one. Often, when I would visit. Here we go. We'll just delete that. Often, when I would. There we go. All right, so I'm going to save this. All right, so there we go. All right, well, I think that's enough for today. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll record some more. All right, take care. Bye. Oh, he's not in here. I was going to show you Simon. He was here earlier, but now he's gone. All right, bye.